Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for everyone who's been waiting for me and all of our new viewers. As usual, we'll give ourselves a second just to make sure the live stream is up and running. Typically, with all of the live streams, anyone watching this recorded will see it straight away, know when we're live. And for those of you who are watching for the first time, we do these live streams to give more details, more in-depth talk about the subjects we talk about usually, and obviously to open the space up for all of the community to talk, share their thoughts and views as well, and ask any questions. Okay, taking longer than usual today. Let's have a look. And by the way, for those of you who haven't seen my previous video, I published another video today about the recent attack in Gaza, in Rafah in particular, and I can see that we're live now and everything's up and live and running. In that video, I obviously talked about the Israeli feedback after they had that attack. They admitted obviously 8 killed, but it's likely that much more would have been killed as well in combination, because that trooper carrier was burning for 2 hours up until they started evacuating the people. And again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. Thank you for the members. Thank you for the subscribers, for all of our regular live streamers. Eid Mubarak, everyone is greeting. Obviously, Eid Mubarak to everyone celebrating and not celebrating as well. I pray that all of you have a blessed year ahead, you and your families and your loved ones. And again, thank you so much for joining me tonight. What I wanted to talk to you about tonight is the Israeli plans not to only attack in Lebanon, but also to settle in Lebanon. So whereas you have this push going on to end the war and to justify the ending of the war in Gaza from many people, from the military leadership, from people in politics, from many analysts, mainstream media, and usually mainstream media in Israel, they will start having these test balloons for the public and hope to justify what's coming. We've had more people now talking about the fact that they've exhausted this campaign in Gaza, that the campaign in Rafah was too pumped up anyway. Hamas is no longer a military power. They're only guerrilla formations here and there. They're unable to conduct a large-scale operation like the one they conducted on the 7th of October. All obviously lies, because that's evident from the level of resistance that they're facing in Gaza and from the fact that the Palestinian resistance invaded Israel not long ago and are still targeting Israel with missiles and increasing their power in Gaza. All of that simultaneously with talks about Lebanon. Now, one might ask, if they failed in Gaza so miserably, if they were defeated in Gaza so miserably, why on earth would they go to Lebanon? Well, that's again purely for domestic purposes, for domestic public opinion, to show that we had certain limited invasions in Lebanon and that we removed the threat of Hezbollah, similar to what they did previously. Does that mean that they don't have plans if they were to be successful? That's the question. Of course not. Like Gaza, take Gaza for example. They have plans to settle in Gaza. These plans were evident. They're still being reiterated by people in the government. Many other people oppose them, but other people support them. For example, Itamar Ben-Gvir, he was in a rally calling for settling in Gaza. Likewise with Bezalel Smotrich. There are dedicated settlements group, or squatting, you can't really call it settlements, because they are based on theft, to settle in Gaza. And those who are not calling for settling in Gaza, they're calling for full security control. Well, now, what's full security control? Between the Jordan River to the sea. That means one state. One state of what? One state of ethnic, racial, and religious supremacy. One regime of apartheid. You see, if they were talking about one state with equal rights for everyone, you would have had a different debate. But the one state that they're proposing is a Jewish supremacist state, as they call it. Now, if they were successful in Gaza, they would have had settlements, because the plan is to ethnically cleanse Gaza, remove all of the population, and settle in Gaza, have settlements in Gaza. The same applies with Lebanon. So, despite the fact that they are incapable militarily at present to provide an answer for the resistance in Gaza and for the resistance in Lebanon, that does not mean they do not have ambitions. And that has been evident from Israel's history. Look at Israel's history. Firstly, the formation of the state was expansionist. The people who formed the state, they formed it by land grabbing and in areas that were far bigger than what they initially had. Then they occupied Sinai. They occupied the West Bank and Gaza. Then they occupied South Lebanon for almost 2 decades, just shy of 2 decades. In all of the situations where they were occupying, they only backtracked and withdrew after armed resistance. In the case of Egypt, after the war, and Egypt got Sinai back, again, that doesn't mean they still don't have ambitions for Sinai. In South Lebanon, by the repeated blows of the resistance, and in Gaza, by the resistance from Hamas and the other Palestinian resistance movements. And what I will be sharing with you today is the settler organizations that are specific to Lebanon. I'm going to be sharing 2 articles with you. One of them was published on the New Arab, and the other one is in a Jewish religious Zionist website called Surugim. The one in the New Arab was titled "Extremist Israeli Settlers to Hold Meeting on Occupying South Lebanon." I might add a couple of things, by the way, to this article, because I don't think they delved into the fact that they are establishing some of their will and demands to settle in South Lebanon on biblical and religious scripts, by the way. However, I'll read parts of it to you. The South Lebanon Settlement Movement will host its inaugural conference on Monday, extending the ongoing settler movement to occupy Palestinian territories. Israeli extremist settler group, the South Lebanon Settlement Movement, announced that it is set to host a meeting next week for further talks on creating Jewish settlements in Lebanon. The Israeli movement was first established on the 10th of April amid ongoing hostilities between Israel and the Lebanese group Hezbollah. The Israeli military has exchanged regular fire with Hezbollah forces across the border in southern Lebanon since the start of the war in Gaza in October. The South Lebanon settlement movement, said to be small in numbers, follows the return of fervency among the settler movement seeking to reoccupy the Gaza Strip, which is backed by hardline settlers such as Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. Now, a small note here. Said to be small in numbers, these are the people pushing for it. These are the forefront. That doesn't mean this notion does not exist. It exists also amongst people who do not follow the same ideology as these people. Itai Epstein, special advisor of the Norwegian Refugee Council, condemned the group ahead of its upcoming meeting, highlighting the group's plans. Quote, leaders of the settlement movement to share success stories and best practice from Israeli settlements in the West Bank in the hope of committing additional grave breaches of international law and fueling a regional war, he said in a post on X. Quote, it is abhorrent as much as a demonstration of lunacy. It is abhorrent as such as a demonstration of lunacy. In April, report by Israeli newspaper Haaretz, settlers who joined the movement to occupy South Lebanon first rallied on 11th April in the Israeli city of Haifa. Really? Haifa? Quote, look at how many civilians are now evacuated from their homes because they can't live in the north. As I see it, our call to our enemies for Gaza as well as South Lebanon for Hezbollah is whoever messes with Israel will lose the territory they attack us from. A Jewish settler told Haaretz, whoever messes with Israel will lose the territory they attack us from. That's a new equation for you. Well, Israel implemented that, by the way. They call it a security belt, security region, name it, whatever it is. And then obviously have settlements. Quote, we will conquer that territory, we will settle that territory, and we will protect our civilians. If they dare attack us, we'll take more. We'll stop conquering when you stop attacking us. The initiative to settle parts of Lebanon kicked off as tens of thousands of residents have been evacuated from their homes, both sides of the border, due to ongoing fighting. Diplomatic efforts have so far proved fruitless. Not counting annexed East Jerusalem, more than 490,000 Israelis live in the occupied West Bank settlements, considered illegal under international law, alongside some 3 million Palestinians. The expansion of the settlements has gathered pace under successive governments since Israel's capture of the West Bank in the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, but has accelerated sharply under the pro-settlement administration of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Since the start of the war in Gaza on the 7th of October, at least 537 West Bank Palestinians have been killed by soldiers or settlers, according to the Palestinian Authority. In April, a UN Human Rights Office spokeswoman, Ravina Shamdasani, told reporters in Geneva that, quote, Israeli security forces must immediately end their active participation in and support for settler attacks on Palestinians. Israeli authorities must instead prevent further attacks, including by bringing those responsible to account. That was one of the articles. One other thing that I wanted to add here is that this movement, this meeting that they're holding, will be quoting historical rights, as they claim, from the Torah, from the Bible, from religious scripts that justify how sacred South Lebanon is, how sacred South Lebanon is, and how important it is to be part of Israel. Then we had another article. This article was in Srugim. It's a religious Jewish Zionist website. Srugim in reference to, by the way, kippah sruga, as in the kippah that they put on their head. And that title in that article, written by Eliyahu ben Asher, said the key to real security, settlement in southern Lebanon. The key to real security, settlement in southern Lebanon. In order to defeat the Iranian evil and in order to stabilize the state of Israel for generations, we need to reach Lebanon. There should be Israeli control in southern Lebanon. Yisrael Sokol, my friend and my family relative, he said, fell in the battle in Gaza on the difficult day when 24 fighters were killed together. On his tombstone in the horns of Samaria, the family chose to engrave the following short sentence. Quote, I saw you, Gaza, in the shade of the cedars of Lebanon. I saw you, Gaza, in the shade of the cedars of Lebanon. Few words with great weight, as this writer states, as was Israel's way all his life. Israel saw this war as imminent. For him, this was not a war against terrorism or for the house. It was a war for the land of Israel and its heart, the Temple Mount. The enemy called the war Flood of Al-Aqsa, a war whose justification for them is the liberation of the occupied Temple Mount in our hands. Israel also knew what he was fighting for. He was fighting for the return of the land of Israel to its true sons and for the establishment of the temple in its heart. This is how he ended with that article. Now, some of you might say, and I'll open up the space up for you after this, yeah, a bunch of people who are radical Zionists who want to expand, and no, that's not the case. When we call Israel a neo-colonialist, expansionist state, that's what it is. It will come under any justification, under religious justification, under a security justification. We need to have a security belt. We need to control that territory to make sure no attacks are conducted on us from that territory, and then we need to settle there to ensure that we remain there and we're protected and we create some sort of precedent, because again, also part of this land was promised to us by our estate agent God 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. And this is what I want to share with you in this video. Let me open up the space up for all of you to check your questions or any comments as well. And again, apologies in advance if I'm unable to reach all of them, but if you wouldn't mind highlighting them so I can try and address as many as possible. Live chat is the best one. Okay, I see many people laughing. Of course. Kate, Saudi ends 50-year petrodollar, but they are inviting Rothschild Bank to open in Saudi. Rothschild sponsor settlement in stolen Palestine. What's MBS thinking? Giving Saudi lands to Zayu. And excuse me in advance about my voice and my a bit of a cold, but trust me, it sounds worse than what it actually is. The Rothschild family is the most significant family in the establishment of State of Israel. They funded this operation. Everything happened from a legit and political perspective with the declaration, the Balfour Declaration, obviously the British Empire handing out Palestine to the Zionists, a country, right? The British Empire at the time, handing something it doesn't own to people who don't deserve it or own it or have any connection with it, at the expense of the indigenous people. The Rothschild family, they funded everything. The settlements, arming the terrorist militias, and they are very much a very valued family in Israel. Some of their family members are buried in very important locations in Israel. Hospitals are named after them, streets are named after them. They are very much the family of Israel. Now, with regards to MBS, I don't see anything surprising in him dealing with either the Rothschild family or anyone to do with Israeli funders or supporters or what have you, although they may not deal to the same level they did or completely ditch them dealing with oil in dollars. Talal Mansour, it has been reported that other soldiers in the ground in Lebanon ready to participate in the coming war. Can you confirm? I can confirm one thing for you. Millions of Muslims, of Arabs, of people who support the resistance would be readily available in Lebanon on the front with Hezbollah if required. Millions. This is all I can tell you. People from Arab countries, people from Asian countries, people from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Yemen, you name it. Everyone would be ready to be on the front with Lebanon if that's necessary. Over 1 million, not even hundreds of thousands. There are way more than hundreds of thousands of people willing to fight, and they will have access to Hezbollah, and they would know how to bring them on. And most of these people wouldn't be afraid to die. So I can 100% confirm that. Many top leading figures in Lebanon already confirmed that. People with military backgrounds, people with the political establishments, and all it needs is for you to witness the resistance fronts. How many people go and support Palestine and Yemen every Friday? Millions in the streets and all across the world. How many of them are willing to go and fight? Many. In Gaza, it's complicated. In Lebanon, it's not complicated. Plus, they already have everything open. They have the land route, they have the airports, they have the tunnels, they have everything. So, if needs be, millions will be in South Lebanon. If needs be, again. Because don't underestimate Lebanon itself and its sons, and the fact that it has hundreds of thousands, not millions, of Palestinian refugees who are waiting for the day that they would go back to their lands. And if needs be, they will be supported by many people who are experienced, by the way, people with vast experience. So 100%, by the way, 100%. And Manuel, thank you so much. You're saying, how right have you been all the time? I pray for lots of food, medicines, and medical equipment for all kinds to reach the Palestinians right now. Yeah, hopefully, all of us do, because obviously the situation is still very bad now. Very, very limited amounts of anything go in. The prices of anything are sky high. But we all pray that we will be over and done with soon, and that this is never repeated as well, by the way, which is more important. Not just ending it, ensuring that no one remains in power who has the capacity to conduct something like that. That's what's dangerous. And that's why I always say it's the day after Israel that we should be talking about. Peacekeeping forces in Israel. International force in Israel to make sure that this genocidal state isn't able to conduct a genocide against anyone. That's what we should be talking about. Obviously, with ending this regime, this psychopathic regime that commits massacres against innocent civilians, that shouldn't exist. Its support should be criminalized. But you have the opposite happening. In certain countries, at least. Countries that call themselves obviously enlightened and democratic and. And that's from Manuel. Thank you for your super. And also Sailor Jerry Swallow, thank you for your super. Israel equals laws. What law? Nothing law. No, not even the jungle law. You know, some people might argue that, oh, the jungle law. No, it's not even the jungle law. It's not even the Wild West. The type of cartel we're living under is far worse. In Horsley saying Britain want it, Ottoman king refused to sell it to England. Well, you also had the Zionist approach directly. And in particular, that was Sultan Abdul Hamid al-Thani, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, who is considered to be one of the most moral leaders in the Ottoman Empire, because the Ottoman Empire had lots of corruption in many stages, and that led to its collapse eventually. But Abdul Hamid al-Thani was a different caliber. And even if you go to certain mosques, for example, in Palestine, historical Palestine, 1948, you will see mosques that have mentions of Sultan Abdul Hamid II and his position on Palestine. Ansarullah saying, Mahmoud, what is the state of the Lebanese economy? Russia dumped the USD from its forex trading now. Is Lebanon getting economic help from Russia/China? The economic situation in Lebanon is very, very bad, is extremely bad. And that has several contributing factors. The political instability, the catastrophic explosion at the Beirut port a couple of years ago, that was devastating. The fact that they're flooded, obviously, with immigration from primarily Syria, and they've had instability for a while internally. The state of economy is not really good. To an extent, with regards to Russia, I mean, Russia's influence in Lebanon comes from Syria, and in particular, it's with Hezbollah. The people who are very influential in Lebanon, in terms of foreign countries, are now they are on opposite sides. By the way, they are France, the U.S., Iran, and Saudi Arabia. Turkey and Qatar tried to increase their level of influence to an extent, but there are many political groups who are very tied with Saudi Arabia, for example. Hezbollah, obviously Iran. Hezbollah openly declared that they follow the religious authority of Iran. So you're talking about a higher level of loyalty. There are many people with total and absolute ties with the French or the American governments as well. And greetings to everyone. Greeting, by the way, Jordy King is saying greetings from New Zealand back, and everyone else greeting as well. Real life Somalilander is asking, Mahmoud, Turkey, a powerful Sunni Muslim country wishing to join the BRICS. If the US dollar die, will NATO and Israel be history? Well, things are tied together. So the economy is tied with military influence and with the geopolitical influence. And obviously, we're witnessing this shift. Like I said, there's a growing argument now that we already live in a multipolar world, because you can't judge a multipolar or a unipolar world based on solely the level of expansion at the moment and not consider the retreat, although it's slow. Like, why is the US and NATO, why are they failing in Ukraine? Why are they failing in Taiwan with China? Why are they failing in Gaza? because things are not like they were in the post-World War II era or the 60s or 70s or even the 90s. It's not the same. And that is a result of decades worth of work when it comes to the new superpowers. Now, with regards to the US dollar, I don't think it's going to like completely die. And again, even if you talk about a retreat from the US, it's to be treated as it is, a retreat. It's not as if the US tomorrow will become like all of a sudden insignificant, but more contained within its influence sphere. It wouldn't be a global country running the whole world. That is, unless you have internal divisions in the US, because don't forget, many people who are patriotic, people who love America, they are very concerned about the state of the United States. Different states have very extremely different opinions to other states. There is a potential of a collapse from within. And when I mean collapse, by states declaring independence. You know, you're having lots of talks about Texas and, for example, them taking certain measures that are totally not in line with the central government threatening to send the National Guard. And obviously the fact that it's a country full of weapons. You have over 400 paramilitaries almost in the US. And I'm talking about people who are really heavily equipped, apart from other groups that are more secretive or people with weapons. These people who go to the Mexican borders wearing like, who are they? They don't belong to the army or anything official. Paramilitaries. And that's something very significant. So if we talk about a US collapse, it would be a collapse from within. It wouldn't be a collapse from China attacking them with a nuclear bomb or Russia or whatever. Because everyone knows that's there for intimidation. Western leaders are irresponsible to a level where they push and provoke and lead to increased tensions. Like, for example, recently them allowing Zelensky to target nuclear radars in Russia. And their hostile tone is extremely harmful, and it's a threat to the world. It's a threat to international security. And will NATO and Israel be history? Israel will definitely be history. We're witnessing the collapse of Israel. And NATO will be more contained at some point. They will realize, I mean, there are already people in Europe talking about the fact that NATO is being used by the US. That's why you have these sharp divisions in Europe, by the way. And it's not going to be like this forever. It's not going to be like that forever. People are realizing in Europe that they are being used and their security is under threat because of US ambitions in Russia. To take Russia as a state, by the way. They want to take down Russia, not Ukraine. They're not interested in liberating Ukraine. They're using that as a front against Russia. But on their way there, they will generate artificial sympathy with the Ukrainian people and obviously support them and arm them, because that's the front to Moscow. Certain locations in Ukraine are just a couple of 100 kilometers from Moscow. So that's what will happen. And there is a chance that the NATO will collapse at some point. There is a chance. Because again, you're talking about post-World War II formations. And Abu Yusuf, thank you so much. And Mena Vanessa, thank you so much for your super thanks. Excuse me. Abu Yusuf saying, does millions of people gathering in Hajj have any impact on the Palestinian cause? Their prayers. Technically, you're not allowed to show any kind of political slogans or political sympathy in the Hajj. They banned that. But the people's prayers, I'm sure they have an impact. Mena saying, Assalamu alaikum, always miss your lives, not today. I'm glad you didn't miss it today. Here I am. I'm glad to hear that, and thank you so much for your super. Okay. Brian Quinn is saying they go to Lebanon because they are arrogant. You see, I have a similar view that they will probably attack Lebanon just because of their arrogance. That usually comes with ignorance, by the way. Arrogance and ignorance are very tied. Because you're arrogant, you won't think realistically. You think about your arrogance, your ego, the fact that you're superior, and you can do it like what they did in Gaza. And again, that's not to say that they wouldn't cause destruction and damage to the infrastructure and kill people. No, they will. But in terms of the resistance, you know that that doesn't work. Even with them targeting this recent senior figure, Talib, Abu Talib, and his name is Talib, and Hezbollah. What does that do? He has someone to replace him immediately. Why? Because the cause is still there. You want long-lasting peace, long-lasting security. Think about long-lasting equality and long-lasting justice, not long-lasting apartheid and long-lasting supremacy. But again, they weren't established to have long-lasting or limited justice or equality. They're there as this project. And this is how they will eventually end themselves. And Gulnara Marchis, thank you so much. Said you're amazing. So are you, and all of you. Thank you very much for your super and for your comment. Teshicom is asking me, have you heard that American Palestinians are dragging genocide Joe, Bloody Blinken, etc. in U.S. court? Are there any updates about that? To be completely honest, I haven't read into it too much, but I do think that any legal action is very important. And that's something that the Zionist lobby uses a lot, by the way. And I know it's very, very expensive, but it's important to have it even if it's limited. You see, even governments at a government level, they will do illegal things knowing that they're illegal, purely for the fact that they have the power and money to continue, and they know that they wouldn't be really challenged that much, because taking someone to court requires resources, longevity, continuous support, and obviously facing all of the things that come with it. But it's important. And there are growing legal actions being taken, apart from the big legal actions in the ICJ and the ICC, by the way. I'm recommended ginger tea and hydration from Molly Imdad. Trust me, it sounds worse than what it is. When I have a cold, it sounds worse than what it is. But we're fine. Thank you for your concern and tips. Mana Vanessa is also saying Iran said it will be hell with no return if they attack Lebanon. I haven't particularly heard that, but I know that Iran has very, very good statements. They use perfect terminology, Iran, like the child murdering Zionist, stuff like that. They use saying it exactly as it is. See, I'm competing, by the way. I am in competition with Iranian leaders when it comes to terminology, and they beat me sometimes, to be fair. And K-Ray97, thank you so much. You see, do you foresee Israel using nuclear weapons in this conflict, or would they avoid it because of the proximity of their own borders? Exactly that. You've answered your own question. It's the proximity. If it wasn't for the proximity, they would have. Because even with the proximity, one of the government ministers, he proposed this notion. We should nuke Gaza. Admitting that they have nuclear weapons, by the way, that's not challenged by Western powers, by the way. And think about that. Think about the levels of hypocrisy. Reportedly having over 300 nuclear weapons. An Israeli leaked the nuclear project in London. But no one talks about the Israeli nuclear project because they're the entitled. They're the entitled little supremacist genocidal state. If it was further away, they would have considered it. But because of the proximity, and if they're planning to resettle in Gaza, they don't want to deal with nuclear, you see, because they want to get rid of the population, but they want to settle. So the proximity affects that a lot, by the way. And I do believe that Egypt takes that into consideration as well, by the way, because they know they can be nuked. And don't be surprised if that attack would be supported by the US if it reaches that stage, obviously. But it's supported. How limited nuclear strike just to achieve political purposes. A couple of million killed, no problem. It's a highly dense populated area, they'll tell you. Lindsey Graham was still justifying Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A century later, almost. And Sardar Moronsi, thank you very much. Sadiq Abdul Qadir saying, Assalamu alaikum Mahmoud wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, Eid Mubarak. Same to you, my brother, and everyone else. Will Hezbollah target civilian infrastructure or limit itself to military installations? No, Hezbollah will target civilian infrastructure. And with Israel, they both know now that they have devastating capabilities. Listen, I think people underestimate here. Hezbollah has a firepower more than many countries across the world, by the way. Like more than Germany, in terms of missiles and attack. And okay, we're not talking about warships, submarines, or what have you, but they have a very, very large firepower, very sophisticated missiles. And they still have surprises when it comes to air defense, by the way. So far, they took down approximately 7 UAVs, at least 2 of which Hermes 900, the largest UAV, by the way, that can fly really high. So Israel is preparing for that. That's why they sent warnings from many months back, including official warnings for people to prepare for shortage of food, lack of electricity, lack of medication, all of that, in case it breaks in the north, in case an all-out war happens in the north, an all-out war breaks. So they're preparing for that day because they know that Hezbollah have the capacity to do that. And again, with Hezbollah and Israel, escalation is met with escalation. I don't think any side would go completely all out all at once. Again, it might happen. It's not that it cannot happen. Israel can decide at some point that it wants to go on an all-out massive campaign, but they are treating it in a limited manner, both sides, because they know the capabilities. That was from Sadiq. And Abu Nasser, thank you so much for your super thanks. And Cray9, and obviously anyone else who sent supers, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. I believe we answered that when it comes to the proximity with the nuclear. Let's see where we reached. The Juma Boutique is saying, note, Russia is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and very resource-rich country. NATO wants to dismember it so it can loot its resources. Absolutely. And obviously, the US and NATO members wouldn't obviously tell you that and declare it, but 100%. 100%. And also to the US, if they get rid of Russia, at least they'll think, okay, it's just China left now. And that's how they're bringing the Chinese and Russian closer, because they know they're faced with the same threat from the same expansionist powers. Eric Strom, thank you so much. Much love back, and to everyone else as well. Okay, X is saying there'd be no full-scale war between Israel and Hezbollah. The commander of CENTCOM visited the defense minister of Lebanon. It means Netanyahu is scared because he knows the capability of Hezbollah. Look, obviously there's ongoing visits. There's US tips, if not threats, to Israel as well. But all of that will not stop any Israeli act if the people in power in Israel want to commit something. And that has been very evident from Gaza. Almost everyone was against the ground invasion initially, including the US, by the way. No one wanted a ground invasion. He continued to a ground invasion. They wanted to have a limited campaign. He didn't have a limited campaign. They wanted him to continue the temporary ceasefire. He did not continue the temporary ceasefire. Joe Biden showed a lot of discontent. Benjamin Netanyahu did not agree to him. Alongside many other examples, to a level where the US started to publicly use leverage against Israel and do a 180 with the UN Security Council and call for a ceasefire that he used to veto. All of these things signal that Israel is capable of doing things outside the sphere of influence of the US. They're able to do that, including in Lebanon. Look at 2006. 2006 war with Lebanon, or what's labeled as the Second Lebanese War. There was a state inquiry in Israel. The state inquiry confirmed it was a failure. Reports at the time from people inside the Israeli army said that we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We didn't know what the hell we were doing, and we were not receiving clear commands and orders from our commanders. signaling that everything's all over the place. There were reports that the US was the country that actually pushed Israel for a total war with Lebanon at the time, to use it as leverage against Iran because they were facing problems with them in Iraq. And despite that, they continued the war, despite all of the failure, despite of the fact that they had lack of proper command and leadership. And despite the fact that they knew they weren't winning. Likewise with Gaza now. And again, listen, the first thing that the Israeli government is interested in is the Israeli people, as in interested in convincing. Now, obviously, you have someone like Benjamin Netanyahu who is only concerned about himself in power, but all of the actions are for public opinion, to show the people who support them, look, we're doing it, we're expanding, we're pushing, we're still killing people. So don't let that make you think that they wouldn't. They would, they could. It's not obviously completely confirmed that they would, but it's definitely an option for them to do that. Jimmy I is saying, do you think Hezbollah will prolong the war or finish it before the next president takes the seat? Zionists are pushing for Trump. Listen, even Trump can't save them. And don't forget that Trump didn't have great relations with Netanyahu eventually, especially when Netanyahu greeted Biden and recognized the elections when Trump was doubting them. Trump is Trump. He'll think about Trump. He will do whatever it takes to get him in power. But if Israel sees that it's more suitable for them to take action now, they will, regardless of what the US thinks. Again, Israel proved in this Gaza war, this genocide, that they are capable of doing things even if there is discontent and disapproval from the United States administration. That's undeniable. And some people in Israel are calling for more action, not in line with the US, disregarding the fact that they are only existing primarily because of the support of the US administration. So the thing is, if Israel starts the war and goes all out, they wouldn't necessarily be able to finish it. And that's what they're being told from the US administration as well. You can start it, don't think you can end it. They thought they could end the war in Gaza with military force. They didn't. It didn't work. And it looks like that was the final one. Again, sorry if I missed any of them because the messages keep going up. And thank you so much for joining me, everyone. Thank you for everyone who participated. Apologies in advance if I missed some of the questions. Again, the messages keep going back and up. Special thanks to everyone who sent supers: Manuel, Sailor, Abu, Yusuf, Mena, Gulnara, Sardar, Cray, Abu Nasser, and Ari. I will obviously hopefully be with you in the coming days as well. Thank you so much for joining in and participating. As usual, I really enjoyed my time with you. And apart from that, Eid Mubarak, everyone. I wish you all a blessed Eid. And take care. Have a lovely weekend. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.